I can see some familiar faces. And hello to the ones that are watching online as well. For those who do not know me, my name is Maricarmen Gamero. I have been teaching in Venezuela. I've been an English teacher and teacher trainer since 2007. And now I have been teaching also in the HAMSA project since last September until probably January and February. And I'm also currently doing PhD in English language teaching and applied linguistics in the University of Warwick. So my research interests, they are focused on the use of the technology in the language classroom, but also in the dynamics that develops through the technology. Not necessarily about the interaction, the way of speaking that is included, but also the way teachers and the technology influence each other and the students. So today I'm going to be presenting the findings of a research I carried out in the HAMSA project for my MA, also in the University of Warwick. And for that, I worked in the HAMSA project. So the HAMSA project was founded and it's now coordinated by Nick Bilbrough. He's over here. Can you raise your hand? So in case you have any questions about the project, you are free to contact him after we're done here. So this project, they try to link up teachers from all over the world, teachers of English, with teachers of English in Palestine, or including Gaza and some refugees in Syria, and the students over there. So they use storytelling. So it's a way for the students to have like a look outside of the country and in the real world, as citing one of the teachers that was presenting yesterday, Sahar Salha, she's about to come. But also, the students, they have the opportunity to listen other accents of English. Not that they're teachers only, but different kinds of accents, like Argentinian accent, or from the UK, or in my case, Venezuelan accent. So in this case, I worked with 3 co-teaching pairs. They were conformed by remote teachers and classroom teachers. So the remote teachers, all of them, they have teaching experiences in different age levels. And the range of experience was between 5 to 22 years. Sorry, because of the sound of the microphone. This is kind of new to me. So some of them had experience teaching young learners. Some didn't. It was their first time teaching young learners through this project. Thank you very much. So let me continue. For data collection, I apply interviews, in-depth interviews, to the remote teachers and to the classroom teachers. I also apply observations to the video recordings of the sessions. The tool used in this project is Zoom, so it allows the teachers to record the sessions. And of course, the online exchanges they had through Facebook and email. The purpose I had for the research was to kind of find out the methodology, the teaching methodology that the teachers were using in this context, but also how they try to apply strategies according to the challenging circumstances that they are living. But my purpose with this presentation is to show you one way of using video conferencing in challenging circumstances and how it could be contextualized to a specific teaching and learning situations and how it could be adapted to those challenges. All of that through the work of the remote teachers and the classroom teachers. So it's important to highlight that the underlying common values of the co-teachers in this case, they felt like a social responsibility of contributing to the progress of communities in need. Also, they value the value they give to innovation in their teaching practice and for motivating learners and promoting change through the use of information and communication technologies. So here you can see that video conferencing acts like the tool that permits the communication between the remote teacher, the classroom teacher, and their students. Obviously, without that tool, it would be impossible, and it wouldn't be possible to reach the opportunities that this tool offers. For example, the co-teaching process, the interaction dynamics, and the continued professional development. So in my case, I call it videoconferencing-mediated co-teaching because without video conferencing, the process wouldn't be possible. So here, how is the technology enacted in the classroom? Well, the sessions are carried out once a week during the school year, once a week during 1 hour. The decision of the role of the video conferencing is up to the classroom teacher. And by that, I mean like the role of the content that is given by the remote teacher. The role could be a supporting practice, it could be an extracurricular activity, or it could be for the introduction or closure of the content. So here we have an example. Obviously, this teacher is anonymous, so I had to change their name. So classroom teacher 1, she said, well, sometimes we learn new vocabulary from these sessions. And it is vocabulary that she was expecting to teach for the following sessions, but she uses that as an introduction to the content, so the classroom teacher completes what the remote teacher started. So it could be grammar, it could be vocabulary, it could be also some communicative functions that it was given during the story. If it is a story, they can also apply other kind of communicative activities. It could be dialogues, it could be plays, it could be poetry. So as you may know, there are some infrastructure issues. Power outage or power cut. There are also issues related low connectivity. So the teachers, they have developed a contingency plan. For example, the remote teacher, if the connection is really low and they lose contact, the remote teacher waits for several minutes. Now, if the connection is impossible to be reestablished, the remote teacher contacts the classroom teacher whether through WhatsApp, Facebook, or email, and she sets some tasks for the students to practice what they were listening to, or follow-up activities so the students they can practice with their teacher as a team. So the teachers and the students, they practice as a team for the follow-up activities. In this case, it's important to know that the responsibility lies on the classroom teacher if there is an interruption. And that is an opportunity for the teacher to do other kinds of activities. I will tell you that in a minute. So this is an example. As you can see, they lost the connection, and the remote teacher sent an email to the classroom teacher, and she said, I've attached the slide so you can practice the story with the girls if you want. So she's giving them material. And I've also attached a chant. They can sing it in the way they want, or we can do it together next week. So that is a follow-up activity, and the classroom teacher can practice with the students so they can perform in front of the remote teacher who can assess them and give them feedback for the next session. So you may be thinking, okay, because of all these challenges, what is the positive side of that situation? The thing is that teachers, they sort out the challenge by making it an opportunity for learning. So let's suppose that they are telling a story and the connection is completely lost. So the classroom teacher, she can use that to ask questions, to recall information of what has been said. Or they can use that for the next session. The remote teacher in the next session can start asking questions to recall information. Also, the classroom teacher can use or can ask questions to make the students exercise prediction. What do you think is going to happen in the story? How do you think it's going to end? It could be also useful to describe the characters of the story, and it could be also useful to ask questions and enhance the critical thinking of the students. So if we see the co-teaching process as pre-stage teaching and pre-teaching, teaching, and post-teaching, here the roles are clear, but they are determined spontaneously. Because the remote teachers, they are volunteering, the classroom teachers, they are also volunteering for the project. So they determine their roles spontaneously. So in the case of the pre-teaching, the remote teacher does the session planning. And the session planning includes the selection of the stories or the selection of communicative activities. And in that case, the remote teacher considers the culture of the students and tries to select the stories that convey a moral meaning. During that time, the classroom teacher is in charge of the logistics, like the selection of the time, the place, and the dates for the session. They also give some recommendations to the remote teacher, so we can see an aspect of CPD there, about the appropriateness of the content according to the age, the level of the language of the students, and also about cultural matters. And of course, the classroom teacher also checks technical conditions, for example, the devices that are necessary for the connection, and also internet connection. Now, during the teaching stage, the remote teacher takes the lead. But first, the classroom teacher, he or she initiates the contact, and that person encourages the learners to start talking to the remote teacher. Then the remote teacher takes the lead by applying an activity. It could be storytelling. And of course, while that is going on, the classroom teacher is in charge of classroom management, monitoring, and scaffolding. For example, that person, the classroom teacher uses attention grabbers to get the attention of the learners, or it could be verifying that the students are working. That person also clarifies meaning, because most of the time, the remote teacher, the classroom teacher shares the language with the learners. So it's the same L1. And in the case of scaffolding, so if the learners do not understand, and it's impossible to get like a communication process between the remote teacher and the learners, the classroom teacher tries to intervene and help the learners to answer the questions. For the post-teaching stage, in this case, the remote teacher tries to set individual tasks or group follow-up activities. So the teacher takes the lead in the post-teaching stage, trying to complement the information. As I told you before, maybe to complete the information about the vocabulary or just to review the content. And of course, that teamwork with the students helps the classroom teachers get confident about their students' skills. So they get to know the students and the kind of level they are getting to. So here we can see, this is the part of a teaching stage between the remote teacher 1 and the classroom teacher 1 and a student. So here, the classroom teacher, she wants to see the drawings that the students were making. So she starts asking the students, okay, come, show me your pictures. So obviously the classroom teacher, she selects the person and shows the picture to the teacher, because there is only one computer in the classroom, and the video conference is projected on one side. So obviously, if the students are kind of shy, so the classroom teacher tries to encourage them to show the picture and to describe the picture. Now, concerning CPD, CPD comes up here as a natural learning experience, because the classroom teacher influences the remote teacher and vice versa. So in this case, what the remote teachers say is that they have learned to be friendly with the students, and that helps the learners to ease their anxiety. Also about content and material adaptability. So they have learned to adapt the material according to the learner's level, according to their culture, according to their age. And they have developed some kind of resilience, or they persevere when there is kind of a problem concerning connection or electricity. Now, the classroom teacher, they mentioned that they have learned about new materials, especially related to technology. They have discovered about new websites and new activities that they can apply with their students with technology. And they realize about some strategies as well that they can use in the classroom. And they consider that their language proficiency has improved. So it's an example here we have. The classroom teacher 2 says that they are talking about an activity that the remote teacher applied called visualization. So their classroom teacher was very impressed about the activity, and she decides that she's going to continue applying it with her learners. So also, CPD comes as a personal insight. And I mean by this that as Zoom allows the recording of the sessions, the teachers use the recordings to reflect on themselves. So we can see here that the classroom teacher, she reflects about the students communicate with the remote teacher. And she also reflects about the way she interacts with the learners. So in this case, the remote teacher also reflects about how they project themselves on the video and their body language as well. And the classroom teacher can reuse the videos so that the learners can review vocabulary. They can also see or listen to the activity again, and if it is a story, they can review the story as well. Now, to conclude, there are a series of remarks I would like to make in the form of food for thought. And in this case, for example, we have that even though videoconferencing has predefined affordances, that does not determine the pedagogic task of the teachers or the way the interaction dynamic develops. So that is going to depend on the teacher's interest, on the teacher's interaction with each other, and also on the value they give to ICT, and of course to challenging circumstances as well. So here we have that if we consider for a successful technology to be like an innovation for the language classroom, it has to respond to the needs and characteristics of the context. So it's not that we're going to implement technology just for the sake of it, because we need to contextualize it to the classroom in which we are working. And here also, if we're using video conferencing projected on just one side, and it's used as a tool like one-to-many communication tool, in that case, it's necessary to have like a far-end facilitator that acts like, in this case, the classroom teacher, who can complement the information, and that person can also work on scaffolding, monitoring, and classroom management. And finally, technology integration in the classroom is a dynamic process, in this case, that may evolve as the co-teaching relationship develops. As I told you, video conferencing may act like a complementary input to what the students are learning, but it could become the main input just when the teachers, they work hand to hand, and they try to implement this and focus on just one purpose. So thank you very much. If you have any questions. So I'm going to ask, if you have any question, please try to use the microphones that you have on the sides, because there are people listening in our live session today. Yeah? Let me see if I can get it for you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Maricarmen. Graham Stanley from British Council Americas.
Nice to meet you.
We've been in touch.
Yes.
I was particularly interested in the contingency you have for remote teachers if the connection is broken, because of course that's quite a challenge. And I was quite interested to know more about the things you suggested the CT, the classroom teacher did. They wouldn't necessarily be English teachers, would they? Or what you suggested, for example, that they did, would that be in English or would that be in their native language?
Well, in this case, the teachers are teachers of English. But if they are not teachers of English, I think they need to be trained in the kinds of the strategies they can develop in case those circumstances come up. So they can do, for example, translation, if it's possible, if they have like a basic level of English, so they can translate to the learners. So I think it's possible with non-native or teachers that are not English teachers.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
What might be some considerations when you are having this co-teaching pair?
Can you repeat the question, please?
All right. So my question is, are there any consideration when you are having this co-teaching pair? I mean, in what ways do you think this remote teacher complement classroom teacher? Will there be any special considerations?
Well, in that case, it's important the pre-stage when they establish the contact. So even though the remote teacher selects the story and selects the activities, that person is always in contact with the classroom teachers to get suggestions about if this is appropriate to your students, is this included in the curriculum that you're teaching, do you consider that this is meaningful for them or to what you are teaching. So I think the important thing here is the communication between the teachers. So technology is acting as an umbrella because it allows them to keep in contact and to establish that relationship. But they need to continue, working together.
I mean, why there has to be a remote teacher with this video conferencing? What might be something that cannot be done by the classroom teacher, which has to be the role of the remote teacher?
That's a good question. And the thing is that nowadays we're talking about globalization. And sometimes the students are not able to travel or they do not have access to international material. They can have access to other aspects and other contexts related to the world and to the language through this kind of tool. And I think, do you have a question or you want to complement my answer?
Both.
Okay.
It's not on. Is it on?
Yeah.
Maybe my voice is just loud, I don't know. Just going back to Graham's point about training for the teachers. I think one thing that I've really tried to emphasize, or one thing that's kind of developed about the Hands Up project, is that it really isn't the idea of imposing a methodology onto a situation.
Mm-hmm.
I think there is a very effective methodology working in that context already. And teachers have a good level of English generally,
Mm-hmm.
and are doing amazing work in very difficult circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
What the remote volunteer can do is they can provide an audience for those students. So we know all around the world that one of the biggest challenges, one of the biggest problems with learning English in a classroom is you don't have anyone who it's natural to talk English to. Because it's not natural for these kids to talk English to their partner who speaks fluent Arabic.
Mm-hmm.
So what the Hands Up project does is provides a voice outside their immediate context that they can communicate with, that they can listen to, and that can listen to them. So that's I think, the main role of the remote teacher.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned something that it would be like a good idea to link up with other classrooms so the students can interact with the students at the same time and not just a teacher.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just add one thing in answer to your question as well? It's just incredibly motivating for the children in that classroom to be able to talk to someone outside the classroom. It motivates a lot of their love for learning English. They want to communicate, and motivation is the key thing for language learning.
So if I understand it right, this classroom teacher, I think I'm not enough, thank you. So if I understand it right, you mean these classroom teachers are local Palestinian teachers, and those remote volunteers,
Mm-hmm.
they are more like, maybe not necessarily native speakers, so-called,
Mm-hmm.
but there might be some non-Palestinian other teachers from other nations to provide an international audience.
Mm-hmm. So not necessarily native speakers, but it could be teachers of English from other countries that want to volunteer.
Okay, so
I know there is a person from Mexico, some teachers from UK, Spain as well. I mean, all over the world, to be honest.
Japan,
Mm-hmm.
Vietnam, I mean, everywhere. Chile,
that's great.
Just got a new one in Chile.
Yeah.
So all over the world.
Two quick questions. How long has the project been running for, and have you thought of other countries except for, in addition to Palestine? Because I believe this works for places in conflict. Maybe you can think of refugee areas where people can actually benefit from this as well.
Okay, that is a question that could be answered by the founder and coordinator in that case.
Yeah, so we also work in Zaatari refugee camp, or have been until recently. I don't think this works. It just sort of...
No, it does.
Oh,
it's because we're live.
Oh, does it? Oh, I see. Oh, I see. I see. Yeah, so we also have been working in Zaatari refugee camp with Syrian refugees in Jordan. And we did used to work in Pakistan as well. But there is something about Palestine, and particularly Gaza, which I think, where this project has been really embraced. And I think it's because of, the blockade and the limitations on movement. So many of the children who live in Gaza have never been outside Gaza, never met somebody who doesn't speak fluent Arabic before. Many of the teachers have never met those people before either. So, it's something that's really taken hold in Palestine because of the particular context. But you're right, there are many contexts like that in the world.
Okay, I think we have one.
Can I just say, just to respond, to add to what Nick said, the British Council are also doing remote teaching with, for example, refugees in Iraq, etc. So there's a lot of things going on, I think.
Okay, time for one last question. Over there.
Was that your main inspiration? I mean, the context you just mentioned? Oh, okay.
It's because we are live and...
Okay. But was that your main inspiration Was that... There we go. Okay. Was that your main inspiration? I mean, the context you have mentioned before to set this remote teaching project? I mean, you said that you were working with Palestine and all those countries. Okay, were they your inspiration to work with them remotely, or it's just because, I mean, they were in this particular context, or you would like, or you try to apply it somewhere else?
Is that a microphone? Sorry.
I think from doing various projects through the British Council in Palestine, I kind of noticed that there was a particular interest in story-based learning. And also something about performance. I think there's something very particular about this methodology, which is very relevant to the Palestinian context as well. Now, in EFL, often we work a lot with kind of pair work and group work, and we're very focused on, we need to put students in groups, we need to get them in pairs working. This doesn't work so well through the internet, through Zoom. Or it can work, but it depends on the classroom teacher believing very much in that methodology. So what happens is often students are taking it in turns to come up to the webcam and perform something. Now, they might be working in groups, but they're taking it in turns to come up and interact with the classroom teacher. And I think that is something, that's something that a lot of the remote volunteers have learned about this project. I think that's how they've developed as teachers themselves. I've certainly developed as a teacher from doing this project, because I've realized that actually lots of learning can happen in that performance stage. And this is talking about big groups, 40 students, sometimes 50 students in a group. But the student who comes up to the front and interacts with the webcam, he is also, or interacts with the teacher, he is also projected onto the big screen. So all his classmates can see him there on the big screen. So, I mean, I'm trying to answer, in answer to your question, I'm saying I think that in Palestine there is a particular methodology which is much more kind of performance-based than we're used to perhaps in the UK.
Okay. Well, we need to conclude. Thank you very much for coming. It was a pleasure to have you all here. See you around.